It's 2 minutes after 1 o'clock, and if you've just joined us, we've wrapped up our open line and now getting into conversation about Kenyans that mourn the deaths of after the deadly protests. We're going to Kenya, in Nairobi in particular, where hundreds of Kenyans have gathered to mourn the street vendor shot dead by the police during recent protests. So the tragedy has intensified calls for President William Ruto's resignation. This is also accompanied by the controversial order to shoot anyone caught stealing or vandalizing property during these demonstrations. Please do make sure that you join us on this conversation as Tapiwa gives us the voice of reason. Join us by giving us a call on 0861 987,000 or using the hashtag PowerZone. Tapiwa is going to be joining us as we unpack this very unfortunate situation. And I think if anybody has put it best, it's Mamlolo, who has identified and grouped Africa together to simply say that none of our presidents are representing any of their citizens in a good manner. It's almost like wherever the bag full of money is at, that's where we are all willing to gather and die hard at that point. Because there is no fight. There's no fight, no collaboration that speaks to the people, that speaks to empowering the people. Instead, people are angry. People are angry. They are angry about the economy. They are angry about service delivery. There's an economic frustration that is happening. We'll be finding out the root cause of this protest. Also just looking at what exactly is happening or what has happened that has led up to this point, the build up to this protesting really skyrocketing. What exactly was the breaking point that caused this outrage? Have their demands been met as well is another question. Is there room for this very same protest to continue even further? Is there accountabilities for the number of bodies? And once again, it boils down to zero accountability, especially when it comes to people that govern us. They get to walk away with blood on their hands, and there's really nothing being done about it. Who holds who accountable in these situations? I think sadly so, we continue to read about all these things that are happening in Africa, mainly affecting Africa. And there's a conflict of whose best interest are these presidents working towards or for? Because I doubt it's for the citizens. Or maybe the actions don't really resemble or advocate for the citizens. It's a complete back and forth where many people continue to die and looting doesn't come to a complete halt. And also remember that looting also then filters down to businesses that crumble and fall. That is changed to unemployment once again. And unemployment is something that we can't really afford to mess around and play with. Especially not in this economic frustration. Especially not in this economic frustration. Everything is costing us an arm and a leg, but yet boiling back down to unemployment, looting, unrest, people dying, all at the cost of fighting for better presidency, better ruling, better governing, better strategies. People can't not be frustrated. People cannot be frustrated. And it's difficult to believe that in a space of a good 3 years, because President Ruto was elected in 2022, after all the promises that were made, promising to fight corruption, promises to represent the hustler nation, the ordinary Kenyans struggling to make a living. But obviously, because sooner or later the mask must come off, many now see those promises as very hollow. Instead of reforms, they see a lot of ballooning debt, bloated government spending, but also the officials showing off their wealth while the country continues to deteriorate. A minister has openly spoken about his expensive watches, flaunting, showing off his shoes and suits. Can we even mention the fact that Ruto had red soles? And those are shoes. If you know what I'm talking about, you would know the price tag that comes with those very same shoes. So how do we afford to continue sitting back and watching everything fall apart? I think the worst part is that this speaks very highly and resembles a lot of what's also happening in our country. It's beginning to look like an African problem more than it might look like a Kenyan problem, a South African problem. Everyone is faced with very tough decisions. Everyone is faced with the fighting spirit, but not really having the tactics. And I think that most of these presidents, the only language they understand is protest, being rebellious. It's never a dialogue. I mean, nobody expects dialogue to be smooth sailing. We're obviously going to have a back and forth. But the most important thing is to really get down to the root of everything and find a compromise that's going to work in favor of the citizens. But nobody has the comprehension for dialogues. We must fight. People must die. We must picket. We must protest. We must burn tires. We must just go all out but civil. Nothing must be civil about any dialogue, about any request, about any demand, about any outcry. This is quite damaging, and it continues to weigh heavy on a lot of these citizens. So we're going to find out about what exactly is happening when we're looking at the economic anger, the financial bill, abductions, suspicious deaths as well. I came across an interview that had allegations of the very same Kenya's protest, allegations that say a 13-year-old in grade 7 was shot and killed. A 13-year-old. How do you view a 13-year-old as dangerous? So much so that you need to open fire. 13-year-old girl. And still, nobody is going to be accountable for the death of that 13-year-old girl. And she's not the only one. She's not the only one. Many people dying at the hands of what is truly a deadly protest, fighting for your rights. And these are the very same police officials that went on a mission to Haiti. And then we get to find out that also numbers have been suspended. So we can't really have full information as to the statistics themselves. How many people have been confirmed unalived? How many people are brutally injured? The arrests as well. And you go on to ask yourself, is there really the capacity in these correctional services to host more than 500 people that have been arrested on that day? On that day, understanding that there's already a number of people that are in these correctional services. And then you also want to kill people that go on social media and speak about what is happening in Kenya, using state resources to find people, to make sure that they are silenced. And not just temporarily. I'm speaking about a proper silencing of someone for the rest of their lives, where there's nothing that can be said. The street vendor that was shot dead by the police. All of this is happening. I also get to ask myself, with this tax bill that had to be fitted by the citizens, obviously proposed by the Kenyan president, suggesting this increase in taxes, is it not also a problem of inheritance? Many people assume these roles and they inherit all of these problems. I'm honestly waving a white flag at this point, but I'm just looking at every possible angle. How do we then divorce the idea of inheritance? Because with most people, it can always boil down to the fact that this was a problem that has always been there, but we just didn't fix it. And that's what we continuously do. We piggyback the very same problems, carry them all the time with every single official that has been put into power, appointed. We still carry the very same problem. Nothing is being revised. Nothing is being scrapped off. Still the same problem. Probably the same channels as well. And yet nobody sees the need. Nobody sees the need to really figure it all out and go to the foundation, the core root of the problem. It's devastating. Businesses have been destroyed. Businesses have been destroyed. On top of that, hospitals as well. Hospitals also destroyed. At least we are under the impression that about 2 or so hospitals have been destroyed. Let's bring in Tapiwa for this conversation, and he'll further give us more details with what's happening in Kenya. Tapiwa, a very good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Power Zone, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning to you, and good morning to the listeners of Power FM from the length, width, breadth, and the rest of the world. It is always a pleasure to be part and parcel of this magnificent show, especially at this time of the year where you want to put the blanket over your head, because of the temperature.
I
But
always love that statement because it speaks to how far away we both are, and you're experiencing a different temperature compared to me. All right, Tapiwa, I think we're going to get into the conversation just very firstly. I think I'm just getting a bit of feedback. I don't know if you can just assist us. Tapiwa, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you perfectly. I can hear you very perfect.
All right.
Maybe
Let's start by breaking down obviously what's happening in Kenya with the protests, which is not just a July thing nor a June thing. Previous years, the build up to it. Take us through it.
Oh, thank you very much. What we have seen happening in Kenya is that, there have been protests. People have been in the streets for the longest of times. They have been in the streets and, asking the government of the day to change, the trajectory of the country from a political, social, and economic perspective. So at this particular point in time, this has been ongoing for quite some time, like what you've clearly mentioned. We have seen a lot of people we have been passing on in the Republic of Kenya and the authorities at this particular point in time. Instead of them backing down, they are actually, we have seen the president, making a declaration that anyone that is found, vandalizing property or being part and parcel of those who are trying to loot, they should be killed. So that on its own, it paints a bad picture about Africa.
Tapiwa, I'm gonna have to kindly ask you to assist me. I don't know whether you have the radio on behind you, but I am getting some feedback from your side, and there's a bit of an echo.
Okay, maybe.
All right. So while we give Tapiwa an opportunity. All right. So while we give Tapiwa an opportunity to reconnect, and then we'll get some insight from him, finding out more about what is happening in Kenya. And maybe if you have some questions as well that you would like to pose, simply dial the number 0861987000 or use the hashtag PowerZone on our social media platform. On the X app, we are at PowerFM987. And let me know what any of the questions you have that you would like for me to relay, or maybe also have an opportunity to speak to Tapiwa live on air and get to express your views as well. We're speaking about Kenya and what is currently happening. President Ruto, who was elected in 2022, after so many promises that have gone unfulfilled, the fight to fight corruption rather, and to represent the ordinary Kenyans struggling to make a living. They find themselves in situations where obviously now they are fitting the bill, the taxes via taxes, and it's getting more difficult by the second. Therefore, a protest has been organized or was organized, and a huge number of people have died, let alone businesses as well that have been obliterated. And on top of that, hospitals, and it just continues to be a very unfair and heartbreaking mess. Let's take a quick break.
They are dynamic, bright little minds.
I've been running around and that makes me have energy.
They have the most interesting perspectives.
What happened to your teeth?
I lost both of them because they were both wiggly.
And could possibly offer well-needed solutions to our challenges.
Why do you like being interviewed?
I like to express my opinions on things.
Power Kids, every Tuesday at 6:40 on Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms.
What does Amandla mean in English?
Power.
Which station are you at?
Power FM.
Are you powerful?
Yes.
Now you are talking.
If you have one of those sharp and witty little people between the ages of 6 and 8 in your life, we'd like to hear from them. Email breakfast@power987.co.za and we'll be in touch.
Do you know who the president of the country is?
I forgot.
You forgot?
Power Kids, only on Power 98.7. Now we're talking. Power Perspective with TT.
The major maintenance that was done by Rand Water, which was supposedly had been completed, would appear has only added to Joburg's water woes. I'm joined on the line by Dr. Ferial Adam, who is a director at WaterCan.
So what happens is Joburg Water will come fix the pipe and there's a hole in the road. They do leave it open for a very short time just to make sure that the pipe has been fixed. But after 24 hours, they're supposed to then write in a job card so that Joburg Roads can fix it. But if you look at the state of Joburg Roads, in general, right, they're in charge of traffic lights. That is the problem. It's the siloism of the different departments and then not speaking to each other.
Power Perspective, Monday to Thursday, 8 p.m. to midnight on Power 98.7.
Live on channel 889 on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
23 minutes after 1 o'clock. If you've just joined us, we're in conversations with Tapiwa, who we are trying to reconnect with, speaking about Kenyans that have come together to mourn the deaths after deadly protests. Tapiwa, I'm hoping that you are a bit more clearer now. Tapiwa is an Afro expert in democracy, governance and human rights, joining us now on the line to continue further with this conversation. Tapiwa, are we loud and clear now?
Yes, you are loud and clear. Can you hear me properly from your end?
Fantastic.
Bless God.
As I was finding out more information about what's happening on the ground and the atmosphere, obviously in Kenya, Nairobi, I think we got a sense of understanding that some of this also comes from William Ruto, who has gone tone deaf after people have spoke numerous times. Obviously, Kenya has borrowed money left, right and center. We're speaking China, World Bank, you name it. Funds have been mismanaged by the very same government itself. But also, it almost sounds as though this has been a problem that has been long-standing. Is it an inheritance problem?
Well, like what you said, in your introduction, all the depressive stuff, all the depressive information, not isolated to Kenya, like what you correctly pointed out, but these are things that we have seen happening in Africa. We know in Kenya, the first founding father in the country was Jomo Kenyatta, then with Daniel Arap Moi, Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta, now we have William Ruto. So the presidency in Kenya, has circulated, within, two families in the republic for the longest period of time. Like any other African nation, the issues which are key and critical have been the issues of corruption, politicians going to get monies, getting loans, but when the monies come into the republic, that money is not put to use, to a good use that is there to sustain the country politically, socially, and economically. The politicians have continued to loot, and as a result, we remember during the COVID-19 pandemic that we had Zambia, which was the first country to declare that they are not able to service their debt. The same applies to Kenya, which also raised its hand and said they were not able to service its debt. And there were issues with the, people who had brought in foreign direct investment. They were having issues with regards to the Mombasa highway. They wanted to get the port of Kenya, primarily because of the debt, how indebtedness the country is. And in a normal African country, it is the people on the ground who suffer. And when people try and speak the normal language to the government, like what you have correctly indicated, the government does not respond. The government in Africa only responds to demonstrations, threats, and strikes, which should not be the case. And as a result, this is where now we have many people losing their lives. Young children, the future of the country, they are losing, their lives in an attempt to speak, to have a dialogue and an engagement with the government. But in return, the very same people who have voted the government in, those are the very same people that the government does not want to speak to. You hear the president coming out in the open and say, look, you can use live ammunition to anyone who's striking, to anyone who's looting, but these are the people that the government is supposed to make dialogue with. So it's is a very sad scenario that we have seen happening in Kenya and the rest of the African continent.
We didn't go on to notice that there's a plot twist. Obviously, William Ruto then decides to dismiss his cabinet after these conversations. This could have probably resembled some sort of resolution or a proposal of resolution, which didn't work in his favor, because we can see it clearly now, the current protest that is happening. What was this meant to do for the people? When we speak about dismissing his cabinet, what sort of reaction were people supposed to grant him?
So, when a person does not have, a proper way of dealing with the matters on the ground, they'll try and bring solutions. But the solutions that, they'll bring to the ground are not exactly what people are demanding and declaring. The people of Kenya are demanding for accountability. The people of Kenya are demanding for transparency. And such transparency, it is not based on individuals, but it is based on the whole government of the day. Trying to tailor-make and chop and change, it does not change anything. It does not manage to change anything. That is why, today when we celebrate 35 years since the Saba Day, the marches that changed, and brought in the return of the multi-party system in Kenya, when we are supposed to celebrate, that crossing over to what we could call probably a better democracy where there's a multi-party system. But at this particular point in time, we are speaking of the bigger things, yet the small things, in terms of governance, the small areas of governance where the governments of the day should be able, to handle easily. They failed to have engagement with the people. They failed to change, in terms of the value of the shilling towards the US dollar, in terms of creating employment. They have failed, and as a result, in an attempt to recover those monies, they've gone back and hit people, with taxi bills, with all those things. And the people then in the community, they stood up and they've been saying that enough is enough. But due to the nature of politics in Kenya, you then have, the two political parties, which are almost at a 49-51%, in terms of the distribution of the voters. So you then have 51% of the voter population happy with the leader. Then we have 49% of the people unhappy with the leaders. So the numbers are almost balanced. And then that brings in a very difficult situation in terms of dealing with those who are disenfranchised, from the basics that the government is supposed to be distributing to the people in the community of Kenya.
Tapio, just very quickly, time is not my friend this morning, but we've had a few statements that have indicated that a 13-year-old girl or child in grade 7 was also shot and killed in this very same back and forth with the police that have been acting on wide impunity. There's zero accountability that has been penciled in. Maybe can we expect any? You speak about transparency. Can we expect any sort of accountability, especially given the numbers that continue to rise, let alone that the numbers have been suspended by the president, which I would also maybe ask and pose to you, is this a legal act?
So, when people are in power, they can always put rules and regulations, and once they put rules and regulations, it appears as if it becomes a mirage to say, as long as the president has said, as long as there's an enactment of the law, then it should be the order of the day. The declaration by the president to say the army, the police should kill anyone who vandalizes property and the looters, that on its own, it tells you that he is the president who is, at an arm's length relationship with whatever is happening on the ground. He is the president who says that the bullet is mightier than the pen. He depends more on using security forces to protect himself and, to fight any sort of resistance and any form of accountability. Look, there is a lot of people in Kenya who have disappeared. A lot of people opposing circles in opposition party circles. who have disappeared. There's a lot of abuse that has been happening to women and children. People have disappeared, people have been killed. Those issues have been raised, by different, various, multiple stakeholders. But what has lacked to that is accountability from the government. The government of the day has not responded. What they focused on, is to keep on amassing wealth for the dynasties, for their own dynasties, and in the process, they have not moved together with the people of Kenya. So all the deaths that we have seen, including one of the bloggers, which happened recently, we have not seen accountability from the government, and we cannot expect them to be accountable because they have set a precedent that they are not going to be accountable, but they will treat and they'll use their overhandedness to anyone that might try and go into the streets and protest. So that then taints, a bad picture, especially for Kenya. Also bearing in mind that there were issues that were at ICC where the President, Ruto, was cleared by ICC for post-electoral violence. But we have seen, that the pattern of violence has not changed in Kenya. It has remained the order of the day. And it is something that the rest of the African continent should be and must be worried about. But unfortunately, the leaders that we have, even from the regional blocs and the African Union, they fold their arms whilst Africa is burning. And that is why we have always said we need leaders from our communities who are completely sold out to making tangible changes within our communities and create employment and create better spaces for the community to live in peace and in harmony.
Tapiwa, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Asante sana. Harambe, Africa.
And that's Tapiwa, Afro expert in democracy, governance and human rights, giving us an overrun of what is currently happening in Kenya as they mourn the deaths after deadly protests, huge numbers trickling in and continues to trickle in. But most importantly, we ourselves have been banned from hearing these numbers. And you ask yourself, why exactly is this happening in terms of withholding information that gives the rest of the country or the rest of the world at large an indication of where Kenya stands as we speak? 1:34 on your digital clock right here on Power 987. It's Power Zone. We're now joined by Kelvin